Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we have Dogmatika Magistus. Now this is actually a pretty good deck. It can do a fair bit of stuff. The only downside I think is that sometimes the deck does a lot of stuff but doesn't really lead to anywhere. But it can put up a nice couple of interruptions. It can recur resources pretty nicely and has a lot of has a decent amount of OTK potential. So we're going first against PK Fire, I believe this is. Yep, PK Fire. We normally summon this, the Madame Vere, and then we link it. I think we linked it into the Artemis, and then we summon Ecclesia, Surging Punishment, because we already have the Fleur de Lis. We're going to activate the Monster Reborn, which will bring us back to thing, and then we'll equip the Artemis to our Vere. Next, we'll get a search for a copy of Zoroa as a follow-up, and we have a Veiler and Call by Grave and Dogmatika Punishment too. So if they try to do anything funny, I can just Fleur de Lis it, and they're dead. So they're gonna be activating some stuff. I decided to use Call by Grave on their Graph so that it does not resolve. He sets a Dino Miscus and a Fog Blade and ends. So I start off with my Maximus Dogma, sending a copy of Omega and Natis. He changed stuff that like banishes. I think he changed Dynamiscus. We're gonna use Omega to shuffle some stuff back. We attempt to activate Zoroa, it'll just get negated. Fortunately, we already have an Artemis, so that will get its thing back. Right here, I did do a tiny bit of a misplay. I should have used Crowley sending my Fleur de Lis to the graveyard, and then I would have overlaid with my Zoroa to go into the rank 4, which could retrieve my Fleur de Lis. But at this point I was running 2 Fleur de Lis, 1 for my Magician's Souls, but I see the problem there, so I just decided to take 1 Fleur de Lis out. Right now they've drawn another Fog Blade and stuff, so we're going to use Shadal Rook, go into a copy of my Winda. Now they can't really do anything apart from setting their Fog Blade, so we activate our Madame Vere, which will equip an Artemis. Artemis will get a search for Zoroa. We need Shadal Rook and go into Construct. Next we go into the Xyz. That will get we go into another Zoroa that gets Veilered. Next we can go into a copy of Fleur de Lis. My Construct gets Fog Bladed, unfortunately. I tried to attack some stuff, I think replays occurred, I don't know. So we're going to use Omega and we snipe out his Seer. Next we activate Magistus Invocation to go into the Fusion, which is basically a walking mind control on a quick effect. We normally summon the Endymion monster, equip it with the thing, and that will pop his Fog Blade, and then we get to equip it to our Fusion, so that next turn we can do more stuff. He tries to body block, but in the end I just have too much for him to handle, so that was a pretty easy game. Just shows the sheer amount of disruptions this deck can put up, especially with the Dogmatika engine, and it does have some pretty nice consistency too, and it's tons of consistency because you have tons of search cards. So let's go to our next duel now. Next up we are up against Infinitrack Machina. It looks like an interesting deck. Let's see what it can do when we're going first. We start with our Magician Souls, dumping in probably a Maximus. We activate Magistus, which will summon a Zoroa from our hand. We're gonna activate Zoroa, equipping a copy of Artemis. Artemis will get us a search. Magician Souls will get us 2 draws, and then we normally summon a Vere. Vere will get a search for a copy of our Monster Reborn. We're gonna use our Xyz to retrieve our Maximus Dragma. We're gonna use the Monster Reborn, and then that will trigger Artemis. Next we'll go ahead and use Magistus Invocation to go into our Fusion. We'll activate Maximus Dragon, sending a copy of Titaniclad and a Apocalypse to get a search for Rook, and then during the end phase we get the summon for Ecclesia and the search for Fleur de Lis. So right here we have a kind of follow-up in the form of Zoroa, which will trigger next turn. We have a walking quick effect mind control, which can steal any card I want. I have a Maximus Dragman, which can send cards like Natis next turn, and we just have kind of a dead Ecclesia. We also have Shadal Rook, which will limit the number of summons he can do. So as soon as he special summons one, I can just instantly take control of it. So pretty nice board. He's normal summoning the Anchor Drill. I just chain my Rook so that his next summon counts as counts under my Shadal Winda. I take control of his Irradiator for now, and he attacks over my Zoroa. Next, I activate Dragma, sending some stuff. I send Natis and Omega. I tried to pop his back row, and it turned out that he has Maximus Overdrive, so I'll get some stuff out. I activate Fleur de Lis, which he should have just changed his Maximus. He should have just changed his Citadel, not that it would have mattered too much because my wind and stuff are unaffected. So right here I have well over lethal, so he just surrenders. The deck also has a lot of OTK potential. We have Fleur de Lis boosting all of my Dragmans by 500. We have the Magistus Fusion, which gives the equipped monster 1000 attack and defense, and we also have the Synchro, which gives monsters 2 attacks per battle phase, and it's very consistent too. We have space to play hand traps. Just a very difficult deck for most people to contend with. So let's go to our next replay now. For our last replay, it seems we are up against this seems to be pure yeah, it's definitely pure Machina this one around. So we'll see how this goes. We're going first again. We start with the Trust Magistus, which will go ahead and summon our Endymion monster, and then we equip Artemis. Artemis will get search for something. We're going to go ahead, draw one, and mulligan a bit. We're going to go into our Goddess, which will retrieve our copy of Vere. Vere will get a search for a copy of Invocation, and then we're going to activate a card that equips stuff, and then we'll go into a copy of our Fusion. Next, we have our Nadir Servant, so we can go into Dragma plays from here. I'm sending the Rook right now because I don't really have any other card in my hand that I want to send. So we're going to go ahead and do some stuff with my Maximus Dragma. You should all concentrate to retrieve my Rook, and then use our Crowley to make sure that thing can't really be attacked. I just want to make sure it can't be attacked. So I kind of pulled the trigger on my Schism a bit late, unfortunately, because I'm dumb. We end up negating the thing, and he kind of just surrenders. He uses a normal summon, and all those cards in his hand are currently dead. On top of that, I can just take control of whatever card I want and then destroy some cards too. So that's pretty nice. I also have recursion in the form of our Xyz right here. I don't think there was much he could have done from that position onwards. So let's go straight to the deck profile now. Right here we have the deck, starting off with one copy of Fleur de Lis, one copy of Maximus, and one copy of Ecclesia. This is basically your main Dragma engine, along with 3 copies of Disciple of Nadir, 1 Punishment, and 1 copy of Rook. These are kind of bricks, you might say. They're not bad at all to draw. They're actually pretty nice to draw too. But just to reduce any form of bricking, we run 1 of each. For our Magistus monsters, we run 2 copies of Crowley, 3 copies of the new one, Zoroa, 3 copies of Endymion, and 3 copies of Vere. First off, 2 copies of our Crowley. The only reason we run 2 is because this is usually something you want to search and not necessarily something you want to hard draw too much, mainly because it does rely on other cards in your hand and deck. So usually when you're searching cards, you do have that set up to send other cards to your graveyard. So that's why only 2 copies of Crowley, 3 copies of Zoroa. Him and our Endymion do have kind of similar utility, where they equip a monster from the extra deck. But what Endymion does, it basically is a mulligan, and Zoroa lets you extend even further, which is very important for the deck, mainly because the deck doesn't have too many extensive capabilities, which helps a lot in going second. Also, it's a tuner, which is a deck which is a card something the deck was missing earlier, so that's one more thing. 3 copies of Endymion. You do want to run 3. This is a very important card. You run 3 of it along with 2 copies of Spell Power Mastery, so it's basically 5 copies of him. He just equips himself with Artemis. You get a search, and then you also get a mulligan, which is very powerful, just to increase consistency. 3 copies of your Vere. This just searches any of your spells, and the spells are pretty decent. We have a Magistus Invocation, the fusion spell, where it can also use equipped cards. Your in-team Monster Reborn, which is a very decent extender. Your Theologia Magistus, which lets you equip any Magistus monster from your extra deck to it. And 3 copies of Trist Magistus, which is helps a ton in extending. Those are some of the cards Vere will search. You usually want to search something like a Invocation an invocation or a monster reborn. In very few cases you'll search something like a Tris Magistus, but it is a very good card. On top of that, its graveyard effect lets you equip things from your graveyard, which is very important. 3 copies of Magician's Souls. This is a very important card to have, just because it can set up your graveyard to get things back for your Magistus Goddess Ninaruru. And on top of that, it draws cards, because once you use the effect of cards equipped to your Magistus cards, such as Artemis, it's basically a dead card for the rest of turn, and Magistus Souls just helps you generate even more advantage on top of that. Just a very important card to have, so it's definitely 3 of. You do not want any less than that. 3 copies of Disciple of the Nadir. This is just for your Dogmatika engine. 2 copies of Spell Power Mastery. This is just to search your Mighty Master Endymion thing, because it is very important. 1 copy of Magistus Invocation, just 1, because you're usually just going to be searching it off something. 2 copies of Virtua Magistus. It is a pretty important extender, but I don't really want to brick too much on it, because sometimes you don't need to overextend, otherwise your zones will get filled up for cards like your Fleur de Lis and your Winda. And it's also just a hard one to return, and it's something you're going to search as always, just like with Magistus Invocation. It's only 1 of it. 3 copies of Call by Grave for hand traps. 1 copy of Theologia Magistus. It's not that great. It's very situational, which is why I only run 1 of. It's also searchable off your Vere, so that's one more thing. It doesn't come up too often in my opinion, so I'm only keeping it as a 1-off. 3 copies of Tris Magistus. This is one of the most important cards in the deck, just letting you summon cards from your hand without using your normal summon, which is very important just to get into cards like Artemis or one of these cards here. One more thing to note is that you can summon any level 4 spellcaster, so it can also summon Ecclesia from your hand, which is something to keep note of. For traps, you run 1 copy of Dragma Punishment. This is just for the pops, very nice interruption, and 1 copy of Shadal Rook to go into Winda. Most decks aren't that great against Winda. For hand traps, you run 6, 3 copies of Veiler and 3 copies of Imperm. Those are just that's just our main deck. Let's go to our extra deck now. 1 copy of Titanic Lad. This is pretty important to have just to get your searches during the end of a turn. So yep, 1 copy of Titanic Lad. 1 copy of El Shadal Construct. This has multiple forms of utility, such as recurring something like a Shadal Rook from your graveyard, and it's also something you can fuse into if you want to get rid of the Winda on your field. 1 copy of Apoklon to search your Shadal Rook. 1 copy of Winda. It's basically a floodgate most decks cannot out. 2 copies of Natis. Natis is free pops. The reason I run 2, even though I do run Omega, is because sometimes you won't always be sending Natis with Omega, so you do have to kind of run 2. 1 copy of Omega, just to recycle materials such as your Natis. Sometimes you even hard summon it with your Zoroa, so it can also help there in terms of hand looping. So 1 copy of Omega for sure. Next, 2 of each Magistus extra deck monster, 2 copies of the Fusion. It's a free mind control. It's a quick effect, very good interruption in my opinion, almost better than just destroying something, which is very important, just stealing their things. On top of that, it also makes it gain 1000 attack and defense, and can also just attack for you, so that's pretty nice. 2 copies of your Synchro. This is sometimes you might want to hard summon it. It's not that good like Synchro Summon it pass, because its effect when destroyed is kind of like Starving Venom Fusion Dragon, where it can destroy all face-up cards your opponent controls, which is very nice. On top of that, the equipped monster, when it's equipped, it has a lot more important effects when equipped, such as it can be destroyed by, well, the equipped monster can be destroyed by your opponent's spell trap effects. On top of that, it basically is kind of like an El Shadal construct, where as soon as it battles monster, no damage calculation, just instantly destroys it, which is very good in beating over cards like very difficult to out cards, such as Eater of Millions that you can't out by battle, which is pretty important. 2 copies of your Xyz. This is just to recover material. Also very important to recover cards you send off your Magician's Souls, such as Maximus Dragma. It has a lot more utility than you would think. On top of that, its equipped effect is also good, where it can destroy a spell trap your opponent controls. 2 copies of Magistus Maiden Artemis. This is also one of the most important cards in the entire deck itself, just being able to search any Magistus card at all at any time you want. Since it's an activated effect and you only use it once per turn, you can just send it off Magician Souls for free. So you can search it off something like a Crowley, and then you can search something like a Crowley off it, then you can draw off Magician Souls, then you can summon Crowley, then you can overlay into something like a Ninaruru, and then you bring back whatever you sent off your Magician Souls, such as a Maximus Dragma. Just kind of a neat 2-card combo between either your Endymion or Zoroa plus your Magician Souls, which does come up pretty often. So that's kind of the deck. It's a very nice deck. It's very consistent. It can put up nice little disruptions, and pretty nice. So I hope you enjoyed the deck list. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, as it really does help the channel. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.